Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I'll be running through my transfer tips ahead of Game Week 22. Welcome back everyone to another video. I tell you what, it's been a bit weird not having a Game Week deadline every 2 or 3 days like we did over Christmas, because all of a sudden we've got a 9-day turnaround and I'm starting to feel a little bit out of it. So it's good to start making videos again and get back into the swing of things. So I do apologize if I'm a little bit more rusty than usual today. If you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here, and if you enjoyed the video, of course. And let's start off by taking a look at Cunha, who is going to be a very popular player to be talking about this week anyway. Probably for all the wrong reasons rather than the right ones, because he's in a lot of teams, only 12% overall, but a lot of the engaged crowd did go there in the last few game weeks, including myself. And now the fixtures have kind of turned a corner. We had a good patch of 3 specific fixtures that a lot of managers wanted him for. That's been and gone. I don't think we can really say he impressed during that time. I think he scored 1 goal, got some bonus points in the second of those 3 fixtures, but I wouldn't call it a success by any means. Now we've got the fixtures turning a corner. We've got Man City at home next up in Game Week 22, followed by probably the worst fixture on paper of the entire FPL season. That, of course, is Arsenal away in Game Week 23. So is Cunha a sell? Well, I think the short answer is probably yes in most circumstances, but I don't think he's a must sell necessarily. Now, as I mentioned, he's a player who I've got in my team. I am weighing up whether or not to sell him. And I think largely my decision comes down to how certain am I of the players that I want to replace him with, and whether or not this is the week to do it. So the reason I don't think he's a must sell is because whilst there are a lot of good players around his price point, none of them necessarily are standing out as a must-buy this week specifically. Maybe other than maybe Bruno Guimarães, who's got a great fixture in Game Week 22, but afterwards, the fixtures don't look quite so good. So maybe, unless I was really certain on buying him, a lot of the other picks that we'll talk about largely in this video as well, I'm not necessarily convinced of which one I prefer. And there are a few mitigating factors with a few of those players as well. With Cunha, okay, it's not turned out brilliantly, but at least now Bruno Fernandes is back. So there'll be a more creative team overall with Fernandes in the team. Cunha will probably be served with a few more chances. His minutes might take a little bit of a dip with Mbeumo coming back in. Obviously, I mentioned Bruno. We've got Amad Diallo coming back in very shortly as well. But he's still an important player to them. And I would be surprised, even with a change of system, if they can't find a way to give him good minutes, at least 75, 80 a match. It might take a bit of a dip, but considering the underlying data, considering what we know of Cunha anyway, he is a goal scorer. He's not really shown it that much this season, but the underlying data is still pretty good. And whilst on the ticker, certainly Arsenal is a terrible game, but Man City at home, at Old Trafford, under a new manager as well, it should be noted. I'm not sure how much that will benefit them necessarily, and we don't have confirmation yet who that manager will be. At time of recording, it's looking likely to be Michael Carrick. We don't really have much information of how they'll set up with Carrick in charge if it is him. But you'd like to think that in a Manchester derby, they're going to go at it. They're not going to just sit back, absorb the pressure against City and hope not to concede too many goals. They're also going to go on the front foot, and Cunha is going to be a part of that, you would think. I don't know. I kind of back Man United to get a goal or two against Man City, especially given Man City's defensive frailties at the moment. They've got important players injured, Diaz, Gvardiol as well. They didn't look exactly defensively robust against Brighton in their most recent Premier League game. And even before that, they weren't putting up great numbers in terms of their defensive output. So I think if you're not certain which player to replace Cunha with, I think it's okay to maybe just let this one slide for an extra week just to gather information. And I'm considering doing that myself. I'm still looking around, trying to figure out if there are any players I'm absolutely certain on replacing him with, because he is very replaceable. He's not a player I want long term. He's got poor fixtures over the next 2, and long term he's also not the Man United midfielder I want to own anyway. So Bruno Fernandes, if I could do it in one free transfer, I'd probably just do that. But given that there are cheaper players and I've only got the exact money in the bank, and I'm not really sure which specific player I'm going after, I think just playing him against Man City, it's not the end of the world, and it's more Game Week 23 that I think he's probably going to be a must sell. Okay, so I mentioned Bruno Guimarães as one of the potential replacements for Cunha in the last section, and I will hold by that. I do think that if you're looking for an immediate replacement, and maybe even you're looking at wildcarding in Game Week 24, which does look to be quite a popular window to wildcard, I think Bruno G makes a lot of sense. He's a bit cheaper. He's putting up okay underlying numbers. It's not the best, but it's actually not that bad considering he is a classic box-to-box central midfielder. You're not expecting 0.4, 0.5 XGI per 90. He's ticking along at about an expected return 1 in 3 game weeks. He's obviously massively overperforming that at the moment, and that should be noted when considering him, that he is running very hot. It is a bit of a purple patch, and although a lot of the returns are because of his quality as a player, a lot of them aren't necessarily directly repeatable. We've had a goal directly from a corner. We've had a penalty when both Voltemade and Gordon were off the pitch, which can still happen, but it's unlikely. And we also had one where he lobbed the keeper from quite far out in like the 90th minute as well. So all high quality goals, and he absolutely deserves them. And people who already own him, you are absolutely loving it. But as someone who doesn't own him yet, I do wonder how repeatable those actions are for the future and whether or not he's going to tick along at the same rate. That being said, I mentioned the wildcard window of Game Week 24. That's probably when I'd be looking at moving on Newcastle players. But until then, if you are penciling in a wildcard in a couple of game weeks, he's got Wolves next up, who, although they've turned a bit of a corner, it's still bottom of the league. And then Aston Villa at home. And crucially, even though that's a difficult game, at home, Bruno has been putting up ridiculous numbers in terms of output this season. I think he's had 6 double-digit hauls at home this season, which is ridiculous, really. So, is he overperforming? Yes. Is it going to continue in perpetuity forever? Probably not. But he does have a number of different routes to points. If there's one thing we can guarantee about him, it's going to be that he's on the pitch for the majority of most games, 90 minutes a match most weeks, which gives him the opportunity of scoring points later on. Someone like Anthony Gordon, he's a great player, putting up much better data than Bruno G, but he's on the pitch for 2/3 of the match. Bruno's on it for the whole time. So if you're still looking for a Newcastle player, if you want to kind of shield yourself against the ownership of Bruno and you think that this hot streak's going to continue for a while longer, which, by the way, there's no reason to think it shouldn't continue for a bit longer. He is playing very well. Wolves away next, followed by Aston Villa at home. I think as a 2-game week thing, it's absolutely fine. If you want to hold on to him longer than that and hope that the purple patch continues, also absolutely fine. But especially if you're wildcarding in Game Week 24, I think it's the perfect opportunity just to have a little bit of fun on him for a couple of game weeks. So another midfielder I've got my eye on as a potential replacement for Cunha in my team, but also if you're just in the market for a cheaper midfielder to help bolster your midfield overall, may I offer you Marcus Tavernier. Now, 5.5 million, incredibly differential, owned by under 2.5% of the game. So you're going to make a massive gain out of him if he does anything positive. And it's not like he hasn't done anything this season either. The minutes have been strong. He's picked up 7 attacking returns. The underlying data is also not bad, especially for a player at this price. 0.34 XGI per 90. Again, it's an attacking return 1 in every 3 games on average. But why are we talking about him now? Well, the key thing that's changed, that's made him a better pick over the last week or so, and the reason that he's going to be spoken about quite a lot more, is not only Semenyo has moved from Bournemouth to Man City, so it makes Tavernier even more important to the Bournemouth team, but also puts him 1 rung up on the penalty list, on the short list for Bournemouth, because Semenyo is number 1, or was number 1. Cliver was probably number 2 historically. Arguably, it could have been either of them at number 1 by the end. We don't know. But Cliver also was probably ahead of Tavernier in the running. But he's out and he's having surgery. So he could be out for a long, long time. So Tavernier is very likely to be the next penalty taker or the first choice penalty taker whilst Cliver is out. Now, how do we know this? We know this because we've seen him take a penalty when Evan Nilsson was also on the pitch in the past. So Tavernier, we don't have full confirmation, but it seems very, very likely that he should be next in line. And even previous to that, he was taking set pieces, he was taking free kicks. He's also not bad on DEFCON for an attacking midfielder either. So he might get the odd game where he gets that extra 2 points. And with all of this underlying data, even if Bournemouth are slightly worse as a team, without Cliver, without Semenyo, you'd like to think that a larger portion of the goal share, should they get any goals, and I'm sure they'll still score a few goals, will go to Tavernier, because he's more important to the team, I suppose. Sorry if I didn't get my words out properly there. But will Bournemouth's overall goals and their creativity go down a few notches? Yeah, probably. But will that be balanced out in Tavernier's case by the amount of importance he has to the team and the potential for penalties as well? Also, I think personally, yes. And again, I think the important thing here to know is at 5.5 million, he's really only competing with Harry Wilson around the same price and the DEFCON midfielders. So do you think that he's going to beat most of the DEFCON midfielders? I would care to wager yes, given that he's also not bad on DEFCON himself. He might get a few of those, but also getting penalties, having some free kicks, having corners, not bad open play data either. I think it makes for a pretty good, cheap differential pickup. Whether or not he's better than Harry Wilson, that's going to be a pretty difficult decision. They're putting up the same sort of attacking data. Wilson, crucially, isn't on penalties. Tavernier might be. In fact, I would suggest he probably is. So it's whether or not you have Harry Wilson's form over the fact that Tavernier probably has the penalties. It's a really close one for me. And obviously, we've all talked about Harry Wilson a lot over the last few weeks, given his form. But if you're buying fresh now, I would also at least have Tavernier in your consideration set as maybe the next Harry Wilson, potentially, because we don't want to chase points. If you think it continues with Wilson, absolutely keep going. But I'm looking for the next player that could pop off and could have a purple patch. And I think Tavernier is fairly likely to be that guy. Okay, so once again, let's talk about Bukayo Saka, who has been an ongoing concern in FPL this season, and in my team in particular. He's not been terrible, let's put it that way. He's still ticking along pretty nicely. He's got 11 attacking returns. And the underlying data, again, it's honestly not bad whatsoever. He's putting up the same sort of numbers as he always has done. 0.34 XG per 90 is strong. 0.27 XA per 90, also pretty strong, especially when you combine the two. That's pretty elite in terms of the underlying data. And it's not like he's not putting up the attacking returns either. Like I said, 11 attacking returns isn't bad. It's just that he's not really ever been that explosive. If you look at the double-digit hauls that he's picked up so far, I think he's picked up maybe 1 or 2 this season. His counterpart, his colleague even, at Arsenal, Declan Rice, has picked up far more than he has at a much cheaper price. And even though the way that Declan Rice tends to pick up the points are maybe the less appealing to an FPL manager because it's DEFCON, it's bonus points, it's a little assist here or there from a corner. It's not a lot of open play threat in comparison to Saka, but points are points, and he's doing it for a much cheaper price. And there are more expensive players that are going to become an option in the next couple of game weeks. We'll talk about Cole Palmer in a moment, where it would be quite nice to save the money on someone like Bukayo Saka, take it down to Declan Rice. And I know a lot of people watching this video have already done that. And honestly, I really can't fault it at this point, because although the way that Declan Rice picks up points are unconventional, I would say, compared to how we would usually play the game, he is still picking them up, and they are repeatable because he's got the set pieces. He's great at free kicks as well. And he is now starting more than ever to arrive late in the box for those cutbacks. We saw it against Bournemouth. That's how he scored at least one of his goals. I think kind of 2 of his goals, both of the goals, came from those kind of scenarios where he's arriving late in the box and he's got a bit of space and he'll get the pop shot off around the edge of the box. So he's got that in his game. He's not playing as a 6. He's playing as an 8. He's proper box to box now. And I think the goals are going to keep drip feeding through. Is he going to score braces all that often? Probably not. But is he going to get the odd goal, the odd assist, and then more consistently get the DEFCON and probably from those set pieces pick up some other assists as well? Yeah, quite likely. And because he's doing so well on the DEFCON, he's also very, very good on the bonus points as well. So 1 assist could get you an extra 6 points because he also picks up the 3 for the bonus as well. All of that being said, I still don't think Bukayo Saka is a bad pick. I think it's just because of what we've seen with Declan Rice that is making everyone question it, because he's still ticking along nicely. It's just that 10 million plus is a lot of money to be spending on a player that you're not really captaining. And at the moment, I can't really see where I'm going to captain him. with the asterisks that there is a chance that Arsenal will have a double game week in game week 26. If they get past Chelsea in the Carabao Cup semi-final, one leg is being played before game week 22, the other one before game week 25. So we won't have the information yet. But if they do get through, it's relatively likely that their game week 31 game against Wolves gets brought forward and Arsenal get a double game week in game week 26. If that's the case, if you think that you would still prefer to captain a Bukayo Saka over someone like Gabriel or Declan Rice or Timber even, I think historically Saka's the one that I'd prefer to captain. So I'm holding on to him thinking it would be nice to captain him in that double game week. Before then, I think I'm looking around and I'm thinking, yeah, I would probably prefer to save the money. I'd prefer the 3 million extra to spend elsewhere. And Declan Rice is just going to keep churning out the points. So long section, I'm afraid, sorry. But I think if you've got the free transfers, Saka to Rice, especially if you've got somewhere else you want to use that 3 million, is more than fine. It's probably advisable, to be honest. But if you've got no other way of spending the money immediately and you want to just hold on the chance that they get double game week 26, and if that happens, Saka's probably going to be one of the most popular captains that week. I think if you've got no other way of using the money right now, he is still a fine hold. And I do expect him to keep churning out the points. It's not like he's going to just do nothing. It's just the last couple of game weeks, he has been a bit more disappointing because of the limited minutes. I don't think that's going to continue to the same extent, but do watch out because if either of them is getting brought off early, it is Saka and not Rice. Okay, so I'm going to stop focusing just on the midfielders in a moment, but another player I wanted to quickly talk about who is being sold by quite a lot of managers. And again, it makes perfect logical sense to do so. Phil Foden, down to 8.7 million, still owned by over a third of the game, 34.8% at time of recording. But he went through his purple patch, a pretty extreme one, and ever since, he's just dropped off and no attacking returns in the last 5 game weeks now, I think it is. So he had a little run of games where he couldn't stop scoring, which we've seen before with Phil Foden, by the way. This is nothing new. It does happen, but he runs hot, then runs really cold. And honestly, this time, I feel like it's been slightly unfortunate. I don't think it's all Foden's fault that it's just gone cold. I think in the last couple of game weeks, it's been more disappointing. But the first couple of that little run of blanks, he was very unfortunate not to get anything. I think there was an early cross to Haaland, which Haaland should have buried. And I think it got saved and Haaland scored the rebound. So that's a Phil Foden assist that never was. The week after, there was an excellent save by the Forest keeper, John, which again, probably should have been a Phil Foden goal plus a couple of bonus points potentially. Regardless of that, he is a lot of money and he has gone quite quiet. So would I be selling him now? I think the short answer for me is reluctantly no, I will be holding on to him, mainly because of the fixtures, but also because I think just the balance of probability suggests that this cold streak won't necessarily keep going on forever. He's still putting up good numbers, 0.28 XG per 90, 0.2 XA per 90. Combined, you're expecting an attacking return in around 50% of the games he plays in. The next 2 games are Man United away, which I think we can all remember Phil Foden's previous record against Man United. He has done very well in the past. And Man United, again, a bit of upheaval there. Not a robust defence, not tight at the back. Foden could have a good day there. Followed by Wolves at home. And again, we've talked about Wolves getting a little bit better, but it is still the team at the bottom of the league at home. You would back him and City to put a few past them. So he's been very frustrating recently. If I didn't own him already, I probably wouldn't be buying him now, to be perfectly honest. But given I do own him, and probably a lot of you out there do already own him as well, if there's no other midfielder that you're desperate to get to immediately and you've got proper conviction on, I would suggest holding on to him for another couple of game weeks until game week 24, when Bruno Fernandes's fixtures turn really good, Chelsea's fixtures turn really good as well, and Rodgers as well could become even better of an option by game week 24 because Aston Villa's fixtures become quite nice. I think that for me is the time I'm looking at getting rid of him. This week, I think ahead of the next 2 fixtures in particular, I could see some pain coming if I got rid of Phil Foden now, and I'd be very worried about what those scorelines could be, especially if he is in the starting 11, which at the moment we've got no reason to think he shouldn't be. Okay, so in the previous section, I mentioned Chelsea assets as a potential buy over the next few game weeks, and I think it's worth discussing now a few of the different options. Now, obviously, new manager, new system, all of those caveats apply because we've got limited information on how they're going to set up, which players are going to become slightly better, which players are going to become slightly worse. Luckily, though, we should get a bit more information before the Game Week 22 deadline because we've got the Carabao Cup semi-final first leg between Chelsea and Arsenal to be played. Now, you'd imagine they go full strength for that, and whoever's fit and available, the first 11 will be playing that game. So we should get a bit of information on how they're going to set up, but because it's Arsenal, because it's such a big game, we might not see them at their free-flowing attacking best. So we're still working on limited information because if you look at the next 6 game weeks, they're not going to set up in the same way against Arsenal as they will against Brentford at home, Crystal Palace away, and then West Ham at home, Wolves away, Leeds at home, Burnley at home. Now, those last 4 in the run, starting from game week 24 through to game week 27, are about as good as a fixture run can get, in all honesty. There's 3 home games in there. The only away game is against bottom of the league, and they're playing 2 promoted clubs in there, and the other two clubs, that they're playing are both candidates for relegation at the moment. It's pretty much perfect. So I think by game week 24 at the latest, a lot of us are going to be thinking, we need some Chelsea players. Which ones are we going to be buying? However, this week is also not a bad time to be buying them, in theory, because you've got Brentford at home followed by Crystal Palace away. It's not as good as the following 4, but they're still all right. And if you wanted to go early, again, I keep mentioning Cunha, but you could look at other midfielders as well as issues. You might see some problems in your side and think, well, why do I have to wait 2 game weeks to get to these players if I've got confidence that they're going to be the right ones to be buying? I think that's where my stumbling point comes in here, because I don't feel that confident in any particular player right now. Cole Palmer is the pick of the bunch, potentially, but he's got his injury issues. I think there's another rumour going around that he might not make it for the Arsenal game because he's had a bit of a setback. So the minutes are just going to be managed almost definitely over the next few game weeks. Is he going to be okay for 90 minutes a week by game week 24? Maybe, but I certainly wouldn't be buying him now because there is that risk, and it's not the perfect time to be buying him because of the fixtures. So I'd want a bit more information there. He might be playing off the right. He might be playing centrally. We just don't know at the moment. So I think it's important to maybe collect more information on Cole Palmer before I would be confident enough to go there anyway. Over to Enzo Fernandez. He's the player that I think a lot of people will naturally gravitate towards because he's a bit cheaper. The data's actually better than Cole Palmer's so far this season. It's actually very, very good data for a central midfielder. 0.61 is phenomenal. And we think, given the way that the new system is going to be set up, that Enzo might be playing in the 10. And if that's the case and he keeps getting good minutes in the 10, he could be a fantastic budget pickup. I'm close to saying that he is an immediate buy, but I'm probably not going to go there immediately because we still don't really know how they're going to set up just yet. Are Enzo's minutes going to be slightly more in jeopardy if he's playing more advanced, given all of the options that Chelsea have in those forward lines? Possibly. Are they going to be a much better attack than we've seen recently? We don't know. Is Enzo going to play in a more withdrawn role under the new system or in the new system? We don't know. I think he's closer to a certainty than Palmer is at the moment, given that he's fit and his data is very good. But even with him, I think I'd prefer to wait a couple of weeks to game week 24 for when the fixtures are really good. And against Brentford and against Crystal Palace, I'll be watching the games closely and figuring out whether he is indeed the pick that I definitely want. I'm close to saying he is. But given that the next 2 fixtures aren't the best of the bunch, I might just wait 2 weeks and then at least I'll be more confident on which player I definitely want by game week 24. Same goes for Chalobah. I think he's going to end up being one of their nailed defensive picks. But again, a new manager will bring new favourites with him. We don't know whether the system's going to be robust enough to be a team that keeps constant clean sheets anymore. We've already seen the fullbacks bombing forward against Charlton as well. So are they going to be as robust at the back? We don't know. I think Chalobah's the likely one to be a good option, but they've got a lot of defenders. So is there a possibility that he's not in favour anymore? It could happen. I'm not saying it will, but it could. João Pedro, same again. The minutes so far have been managed, to say the least. I think if it was still under Maresca, I wouldn't even be considering him. But under new management, who knows? Maybe he becomes nailed as a 90-minute talismanic centre forward. If that's the case, by game week 24, I'm going to want a piece of him as well. So I'm a little bit hesitant or reluctant to jump headfirst into any Chelsea players just yet, because I want to see a little bit more from them to see which players are the ones that really stand out. Keep my powder dry for now, and then in a couple of game weeks, I'll have a bit more information to make the right choice, rather than gambling right now on which one I think it will be. And look, you could gamble now, it might pay off, but given that I'm not completely confident myself, I think I'm personally going to wait. Okay, so we should also talk about a couple of the more popular forward picks and what we're going to do with them this week, starting with Hugo Ekitike, who has currently got a flag in FPL. However, I've tactically waited to start recording this video until after the lineup was announced for Liverpool versus Barnsley, where Ekitike has luckily been named on the bench. So we know that he's now at least fit enough to make the bench a week out from his game week 22 fixture at home to Burnley. Of course, we've had our worries until this point, and I've made a few plans without him in my team moving forwards, maybe an immediate transfer out. However, I think given the next two fixtures against Burnley specifically, then followed by Bournemouth, which also isn't that bad either, I think given that we know that he should be back and fit and absolutely fine to play against Burnley, he is a hold now. He's been very frustrating. It hasn't panned out the way that any of us really wanted it to for any of us who did eventually buy. However, for any of us who did buy him, of course, for those of you who avoided him, it's worked out exactly as you would have wanted. However, given where we're currently at, I think selling him ahead of Burnley, given that he gets through tonight unscathed, and I'll probably pull this section from the video if he doesn't and he does get injured. So if you're watching this, he's probably okay. I think given that it's Burnley next up, followed by Bournemouth as well, which, by the way, isn't a terrible fixture, although they are much better at home than they are away from home, I think Ekitike is now a hold. Now, on top of that, I would also say if you've already sold him or you don't own him, I probably wouldn't be all that worried about it either. His ownership has dropped fairly significantly. The data's good, but it's not, I need to break my team apart to sign him immediately kind of good. It's 0.46 XG per 90. It's absolutely fine. And if you've held him this long, I think you absolutely hold on to him for at least the Burnley game, probably the Bournemouth game. And then by game week 24, he makes for an excellent cash cow where you can drop the funds from him, buy a slightly cheaper striker at that point, and then you can use that money elsewhere, most likely in the midfield where we've got a couple of expensive picks coming through fairly shortly. Bruno Fernandes, maybe Cole Palmer by then. It does seem to be a fairly nice jumping off point. Ollie Watkins is another option that you could look at even right now, but I think given it's Burnley at home and Ekitike should be fine for that match, I probably wouldn't personally be making that transfer, given the information we now have. But there is, of course, one other striker that we need to talk about, and hopefully I've got my slides in order. Luckily I did. So Thiago is next up. He's in the form of his life at the moment. The data is better than Ekitike, 0.65 XG per 90. And he's put up 3 XG in his past 2 Premier League games in game weeks 20 and 21, scoring 5 goals in that time. Anyone who sold him has been heavily punished. I am one of those people. So naturally, I'm looking at him and thinking, why on earth don't I have him in my team right now? Given the data's great, he's obviously put up 16 Premier League goals already this season. He's on penalties, of which Brentford get quite a lot of as well, especially with Dango Altara coming back from the African Cup of Nations. You would expect them to win a few more penalties, and he's still only just north of 7 million. So he's cheap, he's got unbelievably good data, and he's getting the output as well. The minutes are also very, very strong too, especially now that we've moved past the Christmas period where there was a bit of congestion. The only thing that's putting me off slightly is the fixtures. And unfortunately, the fixtures are just not great. We've got 3 away games in the next 4. Those 3 away games are all fairly difficult. Chelsea, Aston Villa and Newcastle all in there. The home game against Nottingham Forest is fine, to be fair, game week 23. But then game week 26 is against Arsenal. So the poor run of fixtures continues for the next 5 game weeks. He's just had the easier games. I do just wonder if it's chasing points a little bit. Now, do I expect him to score in the next 5 games? Yeah, probably. He probably will score 1 or 2 in the next 5 games. He might continue his run and score several goals. But given I've already got Ekatike and he's got Burnley at home this week, knowing that he's fit, I just don't think I can make this move. And it could absolutely continue to punish me. I am very scared of not owning him, but I'm already this deep into it and I've already lost out on 5 goals. And maybe it's sunk cost fallacy. Maybe I'm making a mistake by not just bringing him in regardless of fixture. Do let me know in the comments below if that's what you think is happening. And also, if you've got him, I wouldn't be looking at selling him. I mean, I know some managers out there are very fixtures driven and they're thinking, okay, now's the time to get rid. I've got the goals and let's move on to another striker. I can't see any other strikers right now that I'd be desperate to buy. Even Ekatike, I probably wouldn't be desperate to buy him ahead of a couple of decent games if I've already got Thiago in my side. I'm just not sure if, for me or any Ekatike owners out there, anyone who doesn't already have Thiago, basically, whether now is the right time to be buying given the next 5 fixtures. But later on down the season, you're going to want him again, I'm almost certain. After game week 26, I think it's a good run of fixtures starts again. The data's great. He's talismanic. If Brentford are going to score goals in the next 5, he's probably the one. And let's face it, we're over halfway through the season. Brentford are 5th. So they're a good team and they're putting up really good underlying numbers. Thiago is a huge part of that. All of that to say, I'm not going to be buying him this week because I don't love the fixtures and I'm already committed with Ekatike and I prefer the Ekatike next couple of fixtures. If he wasn't fit, I'd just go out and buy Thiago because I don't really see any other strikers I really want at the moment. Bowen's not been performing that well, although if Paqueta goes off to Brazil, then maybe Bowen's on penalties. That could help him. Mateta will probably be interesting in a few game weeks' time again when the fixtures become much better around game week 26, but I'm not there yet on him. I think for me, it's either a really cheap striker, maybe Calvert-Lewin, maybe Mane or Krupi, but at this sort of price point, it's Thiago for me as the massive standout pick. If you've got him, hold on to him. Do not sell him, basically. And then if you've got Ekatike, I wouldn't be selling him this week either. Maybe in a couple of game weeks' time, it's Thiago again after that. Yeah, I'm really worried, as you can tell, about not owning him this week. But given the next 5 fixtures, I'm going to continue to gamble against him. And I feel like if I bought him now, it's possibly points chasing. Anyway, end of the video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it today. Sorry if it's a little bit longer, but I needed to get all of my thoughts out into a video after a couple of days off. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Leave a like if you have. Hit subscribe if you're new around here. And I'll be back in a day or two with my team selection ahead of Game Week 22.